One of my overarching philosophies in my life is the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of options that you have, right? The better options you have, the better your quality of life. When you're parenting and your child makes a mistake or gets into trouble at a certain age that can impact their life, your heart breaks because you think, shoot, this just closed possibly some options for you in the future, right? Because you didn't study that hard in your junior year, or you got in trouble, with the law. Like we just cringe so badly for them because we know they're limiting their options. Well, the same with us. And of course, it's true when it comes to finances. The more options you have from a financial perspective, the more empowered you are. And, let's face it, life is not easy. And life throws a lot of stuff our way. And if you're a real estate investor or you're an entrepreneur, you are asking for stuff to happen to you, right? You're not sitting in a corner, clocking in, clocking out, going home and living, that certain type of life. You are out there making things happen. And when you make things happen, guess what happens? Crap comes your way, right? You're stirring stuff up. And so how empowered are you when you have more options versus less options?
Welcome to Monumental. I'm your host, Evan Holiday, and today on the show we have with us Ms. Teresa Kuhn. Teresa, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, so glad to have you on. Excited to dive into today's topic and how our Monumental listeners can really take advantage of this amazing solution that you have. And so a little bit about Teresa before we get started. She's a respected financial educator, best-selling author, and strategist who is passionate about ensuring that her clients have the tools they need to survive a changing economy. She's the president and CEO of the Living Wealthy Financial Group and co-founder of the 100-Year Savings Solution. I love that, just thinking big, thinking monumental, thinking 100 years. And her background includes experience as an attorney, a financial advisor, an entrepreneur, and really just makes her really uniquely qualified to help people find their financial and professional success. So with that, Teresa, let's just dive right in, a little bit of your background and also what led you to this 100-year savings solution?
Well, thank you, Evan. So really briefly, my background is a little bit different. I do have a degree in finance. I did go to law school for a couple of years. During college, I worked for a Wall Street firm and then went to law school, practiced for a couple of years. My husband was transferred to Ohio. I was practicing in DC, licensed in DC, Virginia, and Maryland. And my philosophy in terms of our marriage was I was going to support his career because he worked for corporate America, engineer, sales, and I knew I could do anything. And so he was transferred. We left and moved to Ohio, and I went back to working with money. An amazing gift because I'm really not wired to be an attorney. I love the intellectual stimulation and I loved learning about law, but the practice doesn't suit my personality at all. So it was such a gift that we moved and I was able to shift back to financial services. I learned when I got back into financial services, I had different glasses. I had a different perspective, different training, and looking at financial services. And I was working with clients that really, they had done everything by the book. They had done everything conventionally, but they didn't have, they weren't enjoying the life from a financial perspective that they were promised they would have. And my husband and I were doing everything conventionally, right? I was trained conventionally, Wall Street kind of training. And I, future paced myself based on, the experiences of my clients saying, we're doing what they were taught to do, what they are doing, dotting our I's, crossing our T's. I don't want what they've got. They don't want what they've got. Like, what's wrong here? What's the deal? And so I went to the marketplace, the financial services marketplace, looking for solutions and strategies that were congruent with my new understanding of how money really worked. And I worked really, really hard thinking outside of the box and studying outside of the box to develop an understanding, number one, that was different from the traditional way of looking at financial planning. And number two, with my legal training, looking at different solutions and strategies and discarding them because they just didn't live up to the hype, right? And so it was an incredible gift and a unique perspective and background. And it was 25 years ago, the year my son was born, that I can tell you, the glasses came off and I went looking very aggressively for different strategies. I met a gentleman by the name of Nelson Nash, the author of Becoming Your Own Banker. He became my mentor. He became a very, very dear friend until he passed away a couple of years ago. And he had been a forester. He had forestry training, went to college, worked as a forester. And as a forester, you've got to think long-term, right? It's not about planting a seed and selling the tree tomorrow. That will never happen. It's about planting seeds and waiting decades until you make a profit, hopefully, right? And so he was a very long-term thinker. And I started adapting his way of looking at finances and his way of looking at the world. And it was congruent with my new understanding of money and how money worked. And also met a woman by the name of Pamela Yellen, brilliant marketer who had met Nelson, she had done her research because she had been in the financial services industry for a long time and decided that she was going to focus 1,000% on bringing this concept to the masses, making monumental impact, right? Talk about monumental impact. Nelson Nash, Pamela Yellen, oh my gosh, the impact that they have made on society and Americans is really breathtaking. So that in a nutshell is kind of my background. I've been working with this concept for almost 20 years, an old lady in the industry, so to speak. Back then, I can tell you, it literally was pushing a boulder up a mountain. Like if you want to start a business with a concept and a product that is completely demonized by conventional wisdom. And, most people, hear about it and say, oh God, what do you know? Right. That was what I did. And because it was completely and totally based on principles and values. And it was a passion play for sure.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And I love to hear too that, you were going against the status quo. It sounds like you said, the current conventional wisdom of how we do financial planning and how we plan for retirement and how we plan for the rest of our lives doesn't make sense. And you kind of wanted to look at things differently, and you took matters into your own hands and found a mentor who also thought that same thing, was like, hey, how can we change the game? How can we make massive impact and change the way people look at their own financial success and their own also the own safety and security that financial security brings.
Exactly right.
And so why don't we dive into what is the 100-year savings solution and how can people take advantage of that?
Well, the 100-year savings solution is a brand that my co-founder and I started, Rick Sapio, who is just a giant in the entrepreneur world. He became my client over 10 years ago, and we were introduced, we were referred, and he started digging into the concept more and more, learned a lot about the concept and said, I want to do this with you. I want to make an impact in the world because this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And Rick has just, he owns one of his holdings investments, and how he started was a mutual fund company. He is a Wall Street insider, so to speak, right? Owns a mutual fund company. And so he knows investor behavior. right? He has all the data. He knows the truth about how these mutual funds operate and how investors don't make money traditionally. It's not that the mutual fund companies can't make money. It's not like an investor can't make money with a mutual fund company, but it's the behavior of the investor that really controls what kind of return the investor is going to get. So when we met and we started working together with the bank on yourself concept, infinite banking concept, over the years, Rick and I really realized that we have a lot of things in common in how we think. Very early on in my life, I could think out into the future and say, my actions today are going to affect my future. And so the choices I make today are informing my future. And I made some really remarkable choices for the circumstances that I was in. And that's just been a theme in my entire life. Very true with finances. Same with Rick. And here I've got Nelson Nash as a forester, right? Informing my thinking, putting something concrete around my thinking, forestry. I mean, that's something that you could understand pretty easily, right? And so we thought about, what kind of brand would really represent what we're talking about. And it's the 100-year brand. And the 100-year savings falls inside of that brand. But first above the 100-year savings is the 100-year mindset. Thinking long-term, right? Having the decisions and the actions that you make today be informed by what your life is going to look like. And so that can look like, it can impact who you marry. It can impact how you parent. It can impact your finances. It can impact your real estate investing. It can impact the choices that you make in terms of lifestyle and health. I mean, every area of our life can be impacted by thinking long-term. And It's so counter to society, because what is society, especially today, about? Society today is completely about, I want it now. And Amazon told me I can't have my package for another 2 days. And I'm pissed because I want my package today, right? And so it goes so against the grain, but apparently that's in my DNA to go against the grain. And so we named it 100-year savings. And it's not that it takes 100 years for you to benefit from the savings strategy, but we want you to have a long-term perspective when you're making decisions from a financial perspective.
Yeah, and thinking like your mentor, Nelson Nash, and thinking like a forester and saying, hey, the decisions I'm making today are going to affect me for the rest of my life. And decisions I make now could play out for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. And I think that's so true. I think that speaks to, we are all, we're a byproduct of the daily, consistent, small decisions that we make. Or the daily things, the daily actions that we take over and over again become who we are. And so it's so important that what you're doing today is honestly feeding into who you're going to become and the life you're going to live and the impact you're going to have 10, 20 years from now.
That's exactly right. Who wrote that book? Jeff Olson, The Slight Edge. It's all the little decisions that you make. It can help you get to your objective, or it can take you away from farther away from your objective, right? And so absolutely. And it's having that objective, what do I want my life to look like 100 years from now? I'm in my 50s. So 100 years, am I going to be here at 150? Probably not. Unless I'm
never
vibrant.
know with technology these days.
Right, you don't. But if I'm not vibrant and healthy and energetic, I'll rest. I'll go, hang out with God, right? But I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking out into the future. How is my decision today going to impact me 20, 30, 40 years from now? That's really important to me. And even today in my 50s, I think that way. And I think about my son and how my decisions are going to impact my son who's 25 and his children and their children. And so my estate plan is designed to make sure that I'm not setting my son up for failure in the future and his kids, right? So it really, when you think that way, for me, it makes all the sense in the world. And I get it's counterculture. Totally get it.
To that point, there was probably one of the most mindset shifting books I've ever read. I can't even remember the book, but the story inside the book is what stuck with me, is that it talked about how, this is kind of analogous to what we're talking about in the financing and helping take care of your future generations, where it said Indian cultures, they have, like Native American cultures have in them, they say, hey, we need to make decisions with 7 generations in mind. So thinking about, I mean, that's 200 plus years out, where any decision you make needs to be made with all of your 7 generations after you in mind. And that literally shifted the way I thought about everything. I was like, whoa, it's like, why don't we all think like that? Why don't we make decisions about everything that we're doing with the saying, hey, it's not just going to be us on this earth. It's going to be our generations of children and their children and children's children and so on and so forth. So I think it's so powerful when you think at that level.
Evan, I love that. What book is that? Do you know?
I honestly can't remember. If I come up with
Okay.
it, I'll put it in the show notes.
Well, to that I can say, have you heard of the concept of cathedral thinking?
No.
So it's long-term thinking, and I don't know. I'm not a real technical memory person. But let's say 1,000 years ago, if you were somewhere in Europe and, a committee got together and said, hey, we want to build a cathedral, and we want this cathedral to last for 1,000 years. Just having that as the objective informed the materials they would use, the construction that they would use, the architecture that they would use, because that building had to be there and last for 1,000 years versus we're going to build a house for shelter, that can be here for 30 years, right? And so that whole concept of cathedral thinking, long-term thinking 7 generations out, how would that change our planet if only 1% of us thought that way?
Yeah, that's powerful. I never really, I thought about that. Like, you go to Europe and you see these buildings that were built 5, 6, 7, 1,000 years ago. And you're like, wow, this is still here. And, some of the buildings we build nowadays, it's like, they barely look like, they look outdated or look like they're going to fall over after 5 years. And it's so amazing to have that perspective of saying, hey, let's build something that's actually going to last. And that, is exactly what we're talking about today, is let's build something, a financial tool to help your family today for the next 10 years and the next 100 years. And that's powerful.
Those buildings are timeless. The architecture, the beauty, the art, it's timeless. It was beautiful back then. It's beautiful today, right? How cool is that? And it's going to be beautiful if it lasts 500 years from now. Just amazing. And then you look at the architecture that's being built today, and it's ugly today. Imagine what it's going to be, tomorrow, right? Even uglier.
So what, let's dive into a little bit more of, like, for our Monumental listeners that are saying, hey, I'm interested. What is this, what is this tool and how can I use it?
Okay. So I'll start by saying, one of my philosophies, and I do operate from a philosophical perspective, and like certain rules that flow from my philosophies. But one of my overarching philosophies in my life is the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of options that you have, right? The better options you have, the better your quality of life. When you're parenting and your child makes a mistake or gets into trouble at a certain age that can impact their life, your heart breaks because you think, shoot, this just closed possibly some options for you in the future, right? Because you didn't study that hard in your junior year, or, you got in trouble, with the law. Like we just cringe so badly for them because we know they're limiting their options. Well, the same with us. And of course, it's true when it comes to finances. The more options you have from a financial perspective, the more empowered you are. And, let's face it, life is not easy. And life throws a lot of stuff our way. And if you're a real estate investor or you're an entrepreneur, you are asking for stuff to happen to you, right? You're not sitting in a quarter, clocking in, clocking out, going home and living, that certain type of life. You're out there making things happen. And when you make things happen, guess what happens? Crap comes your way, right? You're stirring stuff up. And so how empowered are you when you have more options versus less options? And so the 100-year savings strategy, what it gives you is more options to navigate life through. And it's done using a whole life insurance policy, a very specific design for the whole life policy. And our brand promise is that you get a certain design that maximizes cash available for the client day one and minimizes death benefit, because the strategy really is focused on giving you as much access to cash as possible, right? And some examples that you've got in terms of options with the policy, day one, it's a saving strategy that's going to pay you higher than any other saving strategy out there. Gives you a death benefit if you die prematurely. There's money for your family, for your beneficiaries. If you have a major medical issue, you can tap into that death benefit while you're living for that major medical issue. Of course, there are details. I'm keeping it pretty high level. If you're using it to finance your lifestyle, car, investments, whatever, you get the power of uninterrupted compounding, which is the number one thing I must say that our real estate investors love about this concept is uninterrupted compounding, having the ability to double dip, take money from the policy, borrow money from the policy, and have it work for them in the policy, still growing, and have them work for them in their investments, and a whole lot more. It grows income tax favored. Most of us would think that taxes are going to go up in the future, right? And so it grows income tax favored. It does not trigger a taxable event. And it goes on and on.
I love it. And you and I talked a little bit before this episode. And so let's go into like a quick example for everybody listening. So if somebody has $100,000 and they're like, hey, I want to put this into a whole life policy, but I want to be able to use this, like you mentioned, like as an investment or basically earning compound interest on the 100 grand, but still figuring out how to be able to also maximize that $100,000 and use it for other things. So let's say they want to buy an investment property with the $100,000, but they first put it into the whole life policy. Could you quickly walk us through that?
Sure. So it depends on the age, right? If somebody is over the age of 55, then we could take that $100,000 and put it into a policy. It's called a single premium policy, and they can turn around and use I would say about 85,000 of that 100,000 immediate to invest. If it's someone who's younger, then what we would do with that 100,000 is position it into the policy over a number of years. So really for somebody younger, if they have that 100,000 and they want to deploy it right away, they can take part of it to start their policy. But ideally they've started the policy already and have started building equity in the policy so that they can start using it for their investments. But if I've got a client who's 40 years old who calls me and says, I've got 100 grand, and I want to be able to use 100 grand, in the next month to invest to invest in my project, probably not going to work out. It's something that you want to start doing as soon as possible so you can build up as much equity as possible so you can start deploying that equity, especially with your audience, that are real estate investors looking to, deploy as much of their money as possible.
So let's say somebody puts in the $100,000, and then once they've gotten up to a point where they can use 75 to 85,000 of it, they go out, they buy an investment property, or they invest in some real estate deal or some investment tool, or maybe even something like you mentioned, like something they would need for their business. I know Nelson Nash in his book mentioned like buying trucks for your trucking business, or buying something that you need for your business expense. And so that would still be earning compound interest. Absolutely. While they're doing that.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly how it works. So, the power of the policies and the strategy is, look, eventually you will have more money in your policy than what you've put in. Right. And so once that happens, there's really no cost to the strategy at all. All you're getting is benefit, and you still have access to the money. And so if you've got, like I've got all sorts of real estate investors. The real estate world, there's thousands of ways of investing in real estate, right? And I probably have, in all my years of doing this and all my clients, I've probably seen the gamut of everything. But hard money lending is really easy to explain, right? If you've got someone who is doing hard money lending, they have 100,000 sitting in their policy. Let's say they borrow 80,000. So they'll take that 80,000 and go turn their money over in the hard money lending, and then just pay their policy back. In the meantime, that 80,000 is still working for them. So they're literally double dipping. They're making their return on the hard money lending, and they're making the return on the policy. How beautiful is that? Let's say you've got a flip that you want to do, right? There are a lot of flippers in real estate. You take the 80,000, you go invest in your flip, you sell it, you pay your policy back, and you wait to do it again. If you're doing a longer term investment, let's say it's commercial building and you want to put down the down payment or just pay for the whole thing. I've got clients that will pay their policies back based on distributions, a cash flow of the building. I've got clients that just pay interest. I've got clients that don't pay anything at all. They wait until the property sells and then they pay it back. As many different creative ways that are out there to invest in real estate, there are as many different creative ways that you can use the policy to invest in real estate. And, your audience is all about making a monumental impact in the world. Not just real estate investors, which is why I so love what you guys do, right? It's not just about making a return on investing in real estate. It's monumental impact with the investments. Well, how cool is it to have this strategy that's growing over time, thinking long-term, this is something that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And you're building up equity in the policy, and you're building up, as the equity builds, the death benefit builds, there's more money from a death benefit perspective to make impact, not only on your family, but maybe different projects or different not-for-profits or different, people that you want to bless, right? And all of that you're doing with your real estate and the policies, it's just synergistically building up your wealth.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up, the monumental impact piece. That was going to be one of my next questions, so you beat me to it. I love that. And as far as, like you said, like you're basically, if you use the policy right, then you could potentially build substantially more wealth using the same amount of funds, the same amount of capital that you would put into it. You could build more wealth over time, and that thus could lead you to greater impact, either through your funding or through your time. You could free up so much time to be able to devote to projects of impact or making monumental impact in your community.
Exactly right. Yeah.
As far as what do you tell people when they say, hey, this sounds great, but it sounds too good to be true? How can my money earn interest if it's not even in the policy? If I'm lending money to myself, how can it still be earning money or earning interest?
Well, that too good to be true. I do hear it often. Our process does educate our clients. And at the end of the day, this has been around for a very long time. There are over, I don't know, 1 million at least, people that are using whole life insurance. And you've got to use the right company, the right product design. And if you've got that stuff, that in play, our brand promise is that you're getting all of that, then you will enjoy the uninterrupted compounding. It is not too good to be true. Once people understand how it works, and it really makes sense once you understand, you see, oh, it's not too good to be true. And you know who uses more of this than any other group out there? It's banks, and it's called bank-owned life insurance. And the Federal Reserve says to its member banks that they can use this type of policy for their tier 1 capital, which is the capital that they need to be super safe. And so the banks are using this. And we know the banks own the most beautiful buildings, the most prestigious addresses in all the communities out there, right? So they know what's up.
I like it. And as far as, what somebody could expect to earn as far as compound interest? Does that depend on the policy, or how is that set?
Well, the return that someone can expect, today we're in very low interest rate environment, right? Historically low. I mean, it's pretty crazy, right? Our interest rate environment. And the policies are sensitive to interest rates in the form of dividends. So I tell a client today that's starting their policies, look, if nothing changes, you could expect about overall 4.5% to 5.5% return over the life of your policy. Right? Not just today, but over the life of your policy. Interest rates will go back up. Dividend rates will go back up. The projections that we show on the policies are based on today's current interest rates. And we know they're very conservative because, again, I mean, our interest rates are just insane. It's just a crazy time.
So that fluctuates just based on the overall interest rates in the market?
Okay. Yes, it does.
And what, as far as you mentioned the tax advantages, could you highlight that a little bit?
Absolutely. It grows income tax free. I use the word favored because it's more technically correct, but nobody understands what tax favored means. So I put in there that it's tax free. So the money that's going in, you've already paid taxes on, and the IRS allows for these policies, for the policy owners not to get taxed on the growth as long as they keep the policy in place. If they ever cancel the policy, whatever growth is in there is going to trigger a taxable event. But our clients don't cancel their policies. Once you understand how this works, you want more policies. You don't want to cancel any policy. In fact, we've got many, many clients who have multiple policies. Like Rick Sapio has, I think, 11 or 12 policies. My family has 9. And I've got clients that have like 15, 20 policies on themselves and their grandkids and their great grandkids, following along with the whole 100-year savings, 100-year legacy perspective. You're thinking long term. How am I going to impact my family? Well, I believe, and it's not self-serving. Remember, I went down this journey from a philosophical perspective, right? And it just makes so much sense to me now that I know what I know, and I've been doing this as long as I have. Every single individual, family, business owner absolutely needs to have what this is. And under business owner, I put real estate investor, right? Because they're running businesses at the end of the day. They may be an investor, but you're running a business. Every single one of you absolutely has to have one of these. If you have a savings account and you understand that you need a place for reserves and savings, why are you having an account that gives you so little? Don't your savings deserve more? Don't you deserve more for your money? And doesn't your life and your family and your legacy deserve so much more in terms of options? Because I'm here to tell you, crap's going to happen to you. You're out there, stirring things up, and crap is going to happen. And you need options. And the best way to empower yourself to navigate through life is having great options. And there is no better option than the 100-year savings solution for your savings.
Boom. Very well summarized. I love that. Can you say that quote again that you said earlier about the your I forget how you said it, but it was something like basically the quality of your choices.
The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of options that you have in life. And your options are informed by your choices, right? There are consequences to our choices. There are consequences to our actions.
Yes.
Is that the way
yeah,
you're talking
that's
about?
exactly right. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that again because I love that quote. Quality of your life is the quality of your choices. And ultimately the choices that you know of, that you're educated on, that you're empowered to act on. So I appreciate you for highlighting that so much, and being so passionate about this. I love that. As far as one last, piece of advice, that you want to leave our Monumental listeners with, what would that be?
Do it now. Don't wait. You don't know what life is going to throw your way. If this is something that resonates with you, I can share with you a number that you could text and reach out to us, but explore it. And the telephone number that you can text is 214-949-8082. And you're going to text the word leverage and just have a conversation. And the reason I say do it now is because, I look back at when I started this, and it's been almost 20 years ago. And my family has 9 policies, and I love the work that we did. And I love the policies that we've got. And my son, who's 25 years old, business owner, just an exceptional young man. And I am totally biased, but he is very exceptional from a lot of objective perspectives. We started a policy on him when he was 11 and another one when he was 14. I wish we had done more for him. And the amount that we put in was pretty big amount. I wish we had done more, because I know the power of what this does, and the impact it has already had in his life is tremendous. I wish we had done more on our policies. So the younger you start and the more you start, the more you're going to see, wow, like this is amazing. But just like everything else, it's not a short-term satisfaction. Like, you're not going to start putting money in and saying, oh my gosh, it's like crypto, right? I 10x'd my money. No.
Yeah.
This is slow and steady. You can have the crypto, you can have the real estate. You need a savings account. Your savings deserve more. Put money in this instead of all the other crappy solutions that are out there for savings.
I love that. And I think it's well said that, thinking long-term, that's what we talked quite a bit about, is thinking with the long-term perspective will benefit you in so many ways. So thank you for highlighting that. Let's dive into our monumental questions. What does success mean to you?
What success means to me, if on my deathbed, I can look back and not have regret and know that I gave it my absolute all with the people who matter to me in my life, my clients. I'm all about a 360 win, and I want to make sure that I empower and I elevate as many people as possible. I've lived an amazingly blessed life. Not easy necessarily, but just I've been given a lot of wonderful opportunities. And, I could die today and look back and say, you know what, you did good, girl. You did really good. So I want to make sure that the next however many years I've got when I'm laying on my deathbed, I can continue to say that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What about daily habits or morning rituals that you have?
Oh, well, my morning rituals, basically I do get up and I have coffee. I love my coffee, and I have that every morning. And I do some breathing exercises. I do a brief meditation, and I get started very, very early on my desk, and I take care of what I need to take care of. I've got team meetings, 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. They're brief. They're 15 minutes. They're leadership calls. So at 7 o'clock, it's one leadership team. At 7:30, it's another leadership team. And from there, the day starts. So it's a great way to start the day. I live a really good, disciplined life.
I love it. What about favorite book or book you are currently reading?
Well, the Bank on Yourself Revolution book is a book that I've read many, many times, and I have picked it up again because I've got different eyes. When you pick up a book and you're like, darn, that wasn't in the book. Somebody, the author came in and switched books on me, because, we have different perspectives, right?
Yes.
And so it's a book that I recommend to my clients all the time. And so I'm reading that again. Bank on Yourself Revolution.
And Teresa sent me a copy, so now it's on my list of books to read.
I did send you that copy, didn't I? And if you do, actually, I'll send this out to your listeners. Hey, if you want the Bank on Yourself Revolution, if you're committed to reading it, if you're committed to having a conversation, I will send you that book as well.
I love it. Guys,
so
take Teresa
I might have 10,000 requests for books and I'll go broke, but
let's do it.
we'll figure out the solution to that problem.
Yes, I love it. Teresa, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Monumental value. Love the 100-year savings solution and how that can really unlock a lot of doors. How can our Monumental listeners follow you or reach out to you or connect with you?
Well, thank you, Evan, and thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and
Yes.
I love what you're doing. Absolutely love it, and the impact that you're making in your community. So I would say text 214-949-8082 and text the word leverage. And that's the quickest way of finding us and getting all the information on the 100-year savings solution and our philosophies and the way we look at the world and the mindset. It's a very broad conversation, but we're talking about finance and, really the philosophy impacts every part of your life, right? It's not just about money.
I love it. Guys, take Teresa up on that offer and the book offer.
You got to text me though. You got to text me.
Make sure to text her. And guys, if you enjoyed today's episode with Teresa and myself and really got a lot of value out of this, please make sure to share this with a friend, share it on social media, tag them in a post, let other people know about this episode. And guys, with that, have a monumental day.